What's up, Meta Nerds? This breakdown will have us looking under the Durasteel armor to see how this ship works, learn its history and its ties to shipwright royalty, and how the V-Wing left its mark on the galaxy, pulling from all these resources, and closing with some behind-the-scenes facts. The Alpha 3 Nimbus-class V-Wing starfighter was personally designed by Wallace Blissix, the man that gave us the Gladiator and Victory-class Star Destroyers, and who trained his daughter Lyra to help him model things out. He would become one of the early founders of the Alliance to restore the Republic, while his daughter would continue working for Kuat Drive Yards, and go on to design the Imperial class. It was Blissix's genius that went into the Alpha 3, manufactured by the starfighter subsidiary Kuat Systems Engineering, which would also produce the Delta 7, Eta 2, and later A-Wing, with the V-Wing going into production later in the Clone Wars. But due to a more streamlined mass production technique that was perfected by the stresses of the overwhelming swarms of CIS fighters, this battle-hardened Kuat was able to pump out V-Wings at such a rate that within a few months, the V-19 turret would be all but completely replaced, as Clone Wars pilots preferred this more compact fighter. Each would cost about $15,000 less than the V-19, at $120K. It had a much smaller profile at 7.9 meters long and 3.8 meters wide, while even with the wings extended, it was just 5.84 meters tall. The pilot didn't have to worry about these giant wings of the turret. If you look at the cubic space the V-19 occupies, 1,404 cubic meters, the V-Wing is only about 12% of that at 175 cubic meters. If you wanted an Eta 2 with a shield, it would set you back nearly 3 times the credits. And while there was a version of that with concussion missiles, that was a really rare modification. And there was a mod that packed a single concussion missile into the nose of the V-Wing, and the extremely rare flak gun and proton bomb variants. When you throw in that the Eta was built with Jedi powers in mind, getting away with not having to put a ton of features in there since the pilot could just use the Force. That's why the standard Eta has no shield, but the V-Wing does have shielding, equal firepower, and was only 50 km per hour slower, at 1,450 km per hour. But it has the same acceleration at 5,200 G, and a 75 megalight rating, a stat used for how fast it goes in the vacuum of space. Both of these craft would require the use of the Ciliar 45 hyperdrive module, which itself was rated at a Class 1. And while their laser cannons are the same strength, the Alpha 3 had a much faster rate of fire, being a pair of dual rapid-fire laser cannons. There is an astromech located right behind the cockpit, which instead of an R series was actually a Q7 series astromech. It had a pretty standard 10-jump memory, but was unique in that this dome is mirrored on the bottom, having no legs or treads. It just hovered around via repulsor tech, making it easier to navigate on any terrain, especially getting up and into the fighter. But it also broke down at an annoying rate, proving why the R-series design has remained the same for thousands of years. Keep your fancy floating droids for the tech shows. But since the wings folded down to act as their own landing gear, this meant they didn't need any infrastructure at all. Nothing to grab the ship or to drop in the astromech. Which is just one of the reasons why there were so many factions later on in its history that wanted to get their hands on this ship. It may not look like it, but in a way this is an early TIE fighter. It has 2 ion engines, or a twin ion engine system, with vertical wings that act as heat radiator panels. We even get a glimpse at this mesh pattern that would become iconic to the TIE. While there are also these large deflector shield heat sinks, which are required for powering a shield on such a small craft, while the actual power lines to these shields and the projectors themselves were packed into the nose. Fuel tanks lined each side of the body, and the laser cannons swivel on these wing hubs to give about a 90-degree firing arc. The ship lacks any life support systems, so the pilots had flight suits and helmets that were actually fully sealed. And not just in case of emergency like we see with the ARC-170 pilots, but covering the face like a full helmet. Though we do see this picked up by ARC pilots as well towards the end of the war. There was a very limited run on a sub-model called the Alpha 3B, or Besh, for the letter B in Aurebesh, and there aren't much stats on this, but it is one of those variants that packed a projectile launcher.